Hello F11 members and welcome to the fundamentals of post-production video tutorials for issue 30 July 2014. Let's go into the woods of the Balmoral estate and look at a couple of pictures there that I want to take you through the process of post-production. We are here with these tutorials not just to show you how things are done, but also to debate and analyze why things are done, and I've got two images here which I think are quite interesting. So here I have a shot that I've chosen. There you can see I've flagged it, and I'm now going to post produce it. As you can see, the exposure is a low contrast situation. Looking at the histogram here, I've exposed to the right, so the actual image itself straight out of the camera looks pretty washed out. If I go to the develop module here and look at the histogram there, it's a perfect exposure, but the darkest tone in the image is not a black, it's a sort of muddy grey. So let's work through this, what I'm going to do. And the first thing, as with most images, is I'm going to adjust the black and the white points. So first thing I do is slide the black slider over until the toe of the histogram comes into the edge of the display there. I can also, by holding down the Alt slider and moving this cursor here, it will show me when I start to clip black shadow information, so I can go that far. And just one thing, this is something I virtually always do with every image, but there's nothing to say, there's nothing etched in stone that says that the darkest tone should be a pure black. Most of the time that's true, but ultimately all of these decisions are aesthetic. Next thing I do is come to the whites and do the same thing. I want to move that white point slightly to the right to optimize my contrast in the image, but you can see I can't go very far with that at all. Just a touch there, around about 20 before clipping starts to appear. So that's that, the black and the white point dealt with. The next thing I'm going to come down to, as usual, is the tone curve, and I'm looking predominantly at this tree here, which is so dominant in the frame. What I'm proposing to do with this image, before we go any further, is to actually do something that I've not shown you before, and that's use negative clarity. If I just basically use the clarity slider here and move it to the left, if I go all the way, looks pretty over the top, doesn't it? It's a bit like those diffusion filters that were so popular in the 80s. A little bit naff, quite frankly, but having said that, I think there's a bit of scope for taking a bit of softness, introducing a bit of softness into the background of the picture, round about there. Do you see what I mean? It's just introducing this rather interesting soft tones there in the background. But I don't want to do it over the whole of the picture. I want to essentially keep this tree here that's in the foreground that is so sharp and so dominant. I want to keep that crisp and sharp and just soften off the background. So first of all, I'm going to take that clarity slider off and just process this image now with this area of the tree, that bark in the foreground, as my dominant factor. So I'm just going to use the tone curve to slide back until I get the sort of density I want to the picture. Round about there, I think. It looks pretty good. And I'm going to put a touch of vibrance into the shot there, round about 12. And I'm going to sharpen the image. And now I look at this image and I think, is there anything else that needs to be done? I don't think so. So I'm now going to export that picture, and as usual, go through my settings, put it in a processed folder, call it D-side. It's going to be exported as a TIFF. and it's going to be not resized and not watermarked. At the moment I don't want to do anything, so I'll just export that. And now come back to the image, and I'm going to take the sharpening off. So if I just go down here to the sharpen module here, sharpening nil. I'm just looking at the background now, and if I go up here and go to the clarity slider, and this is where I'm going to be taking some clarity out of the image. I don't want to do it so that it's too obvious, just a really subtle kind of touch to the image there. So I'm going to go with round about that much. It's just it gives a certain softness to the background. And I'm now going to export that. And there we go. So now I'm going to open them in Photoshop. So I've got the images both open now in Photoshop. If I go to Window, Arrange, Workspace, Arrange and Tile Up to Vertical, I can see them next to each other. Just select that one, come down on the magnification so they're both the same size, sat next to each other, and I do that by holding down Control and minus or plus to adjust the size. You can use it using the navigator tool as well. Just to show you, just go like that and you go up and down in increments. Okay, so there they are. This is the soft one, this is the hard one, as it were. There's lovely detail there in the texture of that tree there, which is a dominant feature in the frame, and in the background I'm liking those tones with that slight diffusion introduced to the picture. So now I want to put the two together. So what I'm going to do is essentially select all of this image here, select all, and I'm going to now edit, cut and paste it on top of this one. Okay, so I just go Control V, and the hard one is on top of the soft one. I'm finished with this picture now. I can close that, don't need to save the changes. If I bring in my layer palette here, you'll see now I have the hard image on top of the soft image, and if I just click that eye on and off, you can see the soft one underneath. So what I want to do is essentially just create a layer mask so that I can see just this bit of the hard image, leaving the soft bit behind to come through in the background. And so I just go really easily here, bring in my tools there, I go to the halo, and I'm just going to roughly select an area like this, which is actually, do you know, thinking about this, looking at this, I'm just going to cancel that, deselect, because I want to include that tree there, which has got some good detail in it as well. So I'm going to reselect something like about that. Okay, good one. And now what I do is create the layer mask. But before I do that, I just need to feather that selection. And I go here, select, modify, feather, and I'm going to select a feather radius of 100 pixels across that edge there to just give me a soft edge. So I'll click on OK there. And now if I go up to Layer, Layer Mask, and reveal the selection, what that's going to do is let me see the selection with the bit at the side here behind the soft bit. So there you have it. You can see that softness just creeping in on the back. If I go up in size, you'll see it much better now. And essentially if I click that on and off, you can see I've retained this clarity, this sharpness, texture to that tree in the foreground, whereas the background has got the interesting effect that I'm after. It's a pretty subtle thing, and I hope that it's not very obvious. Just a real subtle touch just to bring out the picture. An interesting technique, one that I don't often do, but certainly there is a time and a place for negative clarity. So the last thing I'm going to do now is just fine-tune the contrast of both layers, starting with the top layer, which is just for this tree, well, these two trees really. So first of all, I go to Image, making sure I've selected the right layer there, by the way, Image, Adjustments, Curves, and basically now just tweak the black and the white point appropriately. And if I click the Show Clipping box and move this slider across, it'll tell me when I'm starting to lose highlight information just in that area of the picture. Same with the shadows. Can't really go that far with anywhere with the black points. Always remember, in my book, every pixel is precious, so unclip the Show Clipping box, click Preview on and off, and you can see I've just in effect brightened that area of the image. It's too much actually, so I want to just bring the density back to where it was there. And now if I preview on and off, the change is probably, on the video you are watching now, virtually indecipherable. There is a very, very subtle tweaking of the contrast for that area of the picture taking place. But this is a game of millimeters and pixels, and it's subtle changes like this which add up to the whole. I'm finished with that now, so I'll click OK, and now I could look at the background. I could do the same with this background layer, but as I said before, all changes are ultimately aesthetic, and I'm quite happy with that softness to the background. So that's it, the picture's done, and I'm quite happy with that. So I just go to Layer, Flatten Image, and I will now save this as a master TIFF to be dust busted and printed. Interesting one, negative clarity, an interesting technique. So in the next part 2, we'll be going into the woods again, these same woods, and working on a different picture. I'll see you there.